Hello, everyone. Welcome to the abhra webinar. We're happy you could join us today. Our webinar today is on success stories from the ServiceNow SAM rodeo, rounding up wayward IT assets. Our presenters today are Karthik Basava, Director of ServiceNow Practice at abhra, and Shravan Kumar Potnuru, Project Manager at abhra. The webinar will go through typical challenges with SAM implementation and the ServiceNow solution and take you through a real-life case study. And now handing it over to Shravan for the webinar.
Thank you, Pravina. Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Shravan. I'll quickly take you through the agenda, and then I'll give a brief intro about our company, abhra Inc., and then I'll hand it over to Karthik to run you through the, software asset management solution that we have implemented. So, in the current webinar, we'll cover, a brief about abhra Inc. and the typical challenges of software asset management and what is ServiceNow's solution to address those challenges. And then we'll explain you what is our experience and expertise in software asset management implementation, and then we'll open it for Q&A. So with this said, I'll just give a brief intro about abhra. We are a global IT solutions company with more than 10 years of experience in IT services as well as product engineering. We are a ServiceNow, silver partner, services silver partner, and we are bronze technology partner as well. So our offerings vary from, platform implementation to health checks to, managed services in different verticals and we have experience in, retail, education, high tech, and few other verticals. We do have a center of excellence with, more than 75 resources, ServiceNow certified resources. And we have our own MSP instance where we onboarded few clients for their ticket, predominantly for ticket management, the ITSM. Our unique strengths are, building, we have implemented in niche areas of ServiceNow like software asset management, GRC. We have implementation experience in those, new modules, and we do have, more than 20 plus implementations in ITSM, around 18 implementations in ITOM. So this is the brief about our capability and our, and our ServiceNow practice. Now I'll hand it over to Karthik to run you through the software asset management. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Shravan and Pravina, for setting the context. Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Karthik Basava, Director of the ServiceNow Practice for abhra Inc. And I am a certified ServiceNow implementation specialist in ITSM and also SAM now. So, as set as the agenda for the session by Shravan as well as Pravina, I'm going to start with talking about typical challenges that customers have come to us in terms of many proposals or other ways, the typical challenges that we see in SAM, followed by ServiceNow's out-of-the-box SAM capabilities for another brief 2-3 minutes. And then predominantly we wanted to talk about our implementation experience and journey in the SAM space by walking you through one of our implementations that we've done in the recent past and sharing some of our lessons as well as implementation plans and the success we had in the implementation. Post which we'll open it for QA. So with that, and of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, you can always keep putting them in the chat box there, and we will take up as we come to the Q&A again. So with that, of all of this introductions and the context, I will get started with some of the typical challenges we see in SAM currently, right? So we have listed top 6 of them that we have seen over and over that customers have come to us with, as well as some of the proposals we've seen. And it starts with one of them being an unwanted noise during discovery. There are many discovery tools out there who are helping in creating a single source of record for software usage, but more often than not, we see that there's a lot of noise in terms of hotfixes, executable files, and security updates, install files, everything being counted as an install, and then making it difficult to manage the software or the true installations that are worth managing and monitoring, right? So how do you deal with all of those noise coming in from this discovery tools is one of the challenge. And maintaining and managing an ever-changing environment, needless to say, in this day and age, with the number of SaaS platforms and the number of tools and software that are available in the market, and shadow teams and IT teams using and procuring their own software, it makes it even more challenging for the SAM administrators and managers to keep stock of their environment in terms of the usage as well as compliance in general. And add to it, cloud applications and SaaS applications where even the usage has to be monitored within the portals, and how do you keep track of all your SaaS usage? For that very matter, even ServiceNow and its license usage, if you think about how do you keep track of your license consumption through portals and so on and so forth, right? So that adds to the challenge of managing your software assets. And some of the other ones generally are staying audit ready, which is the single biggest pain point for the SAM administrators in being ready for audits across the major vendors as well as even other vendors in general, right? So other two being having a clear roadmap for the program in general, as well as how do you increase or enhance the consumer experience in ordering softwares and publishing a software catalog which enterprises could use, users across the enterprise could be using to download or install new softwares. So those are some of the areas we just try to summarize and highlight as to some of the key challenges that we see in the SAM space in typical implementations. And to address that, most of you must be aware by now that ServiceNow has a product on the platform for managing software assets, the software SAM Professional. While in its previous avatar there was SAM Foundation before, but I think it's truly with the SAM Professional they'll try to increase the product robustly and then bring in a lot of features and capabilities, right? So we are referring to the SAM Professional here. And within SAM Professional, we try to again summarize for you what are some of the core capabilities of SAM Professional, which include, well, discovery is a product outside of it, but within SAM, if you have SAM Professional installed, you would as well get additional tables for capturing your software installs data and your discovery models data, right? So that is where we're highlighting discovery. And of course, adding to the point of there are many discovery tools outside, again, how different is it or how it is helping in reducing noise. So being the highly configurable tool that is ServiceNow, you would have options to configure to eliminate hotfixes, as well as, you can put in any keyword as filters and apply those filters in your discovery stage itself, so that you can prevent a lot of those unwanted noise coming into the system in the first place. So you could obviously be configuring discover to prevent noise at that level itself. Then of course, one of the key addition of SAM Professional is their content library, the robust content library that they've introduced, which they've taken a crowdsourced approach to get data across customers, of course, where there is an acceptance by the customer anonymously, to create a robust library of software in general, and also working with vendors primarily to getting publisher part numbers into the system and maintaining a library, right? So that is one of the service as a service you receive once you have SAM Professional subscription, the access to the content library. Then they have automated reconciliation, which is actually the algorithm or the logic that actually runs to calculate your compliance position based on what you're entitled with what you're using. And again, mind you that across different vendors, the very way in which you calculate reconciliation and compliance would be different. And they have accommodated for, as of today, and at least as of Kingston, they had 4 publisher packs. And now with London, they had added 2 more Adobe to the pack. So there are 5 of the major vendors right today where there is automated reconciliation. A side note on that, you can obviously do automated reconciliation for other vendors as well. It's just that for all of those publisher pack vendors, there are specific license metrics that are out of the box that could be tried to run reconciliation. Then moving on, they also have remediation and reclamation rules you could be configuring in terms of what would you do once you identify in terms of SAM position being over or under compliant, such a set of actions and rules to notify as well as act upon. You can configure remediation rules and reclamation rules, and also from an ordering and catalog standpoint, you could blacklist a few softwares across the organizations in terms of their usage. So all of it, again, just we were trying to bring in some of the out-of-the-box ServiceNow SAM solution capabilities, and with that context of some of the typical challenges across the various implementations that we've seen, and wanted to set that as a foundation to the next phase of this webinar, which is going to be about implementation that we did for a Fortune 200 company, and where we have seen great success in terms of implementing it, as well as achieving the objectives that the client organization had for us. With that, I will take a pause here and then move on to the next slide. So if you have any questions, meanwhile, you can just keep starting to post them on the chat here. So moving on to the second phase of this webinar, which is about the particular implementation. I will start by introducing the client briefly. So the client is, like I was saying, is a Fortune 200 company, one of the major retailers and wholesalers in the United States, with multiple stores across different locations across the US. And in terms of their software estate, as on count, and when we did the implementation, they had about 60,000 installations of softwares across different vendors, of course. In not all of their stores yet, but their corporate office and few of their major centers and locations, right? And we just trying to give you the magnitude of the estate that we have done in this particular implementation. About 34K software models, and the major software vendors being IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, and SAP, and VMware as well was one other vendor we covered. And in terms of the locations or domains which we were discovering and bringing software from, there were about 4 disparate geographic locations from which we are bringing in all of this data across 1,800 odd servers and 1,200 odd end user computing devices. So those are some of the numbers with regards to estate and the client in terms of what we set out to. And the problem statement that was given to us from the implementation standpoint by the client organization, and specifically the CIO office, is that from the current position of manually getting ready for compliance and auditing and studying compliance position, we would have to come to a stage where we would be able to pull in compliance position just in time when when an audit or anything is set to happen, right? So a higher level of confidence with regards to our compliance position as in, for audits and being ready for audits. So that was just to summarize the whole problem statement and the whole full-fledged proposal for this session. So with that as a context of who the customer is and their landscape is, we have went about or would like to talk about some of the solution highlights and what we have did for them. So in a quick 9 weeks, we have laid out the foundation phase of we have done it in a phase-wise, and the first phase was the foundation phase, which we have done in a quick 9 weeks, and laid the foundation for them to go on with the SAM program in general. And within those 9 weeks, we have one, like we talked about, we done discovery across their servers to bring in the software usage data, as well as integrated with SCCM to bring in the data of the end user computing device. And then we have created a system of record and single source of truth for the entitlement information, have collected the various entitlement data from across the procurement systems and the SAM teams, managers, and brought them all into ServiceNow. And finally, of course, once you have your usage and your entitlement information, we have ran the reconciliation, and before that, normalize the data, and then run reconciliation to get the compliance position of those, primarily the 4 vendors that were our focus for this phase. And in addition to those 3 of them, our implementation of this 9 weeks also included a client training in terms of their SAM administrators as well as SAM managers, for them to not only understand what we have done, but also to enable them to run this program and set and onboard new software vendors, as well as address compliance issues with regards to whether if you are non-compliant or where there is underutilization. How do you reclaim some of those licenses that are not being used? So have set them in place, set them up to run their program by themselves as part of this implementation. So that is some of the just a high level highlights of some of the solution that we did. So in terms of, so we talked about the customer, the problem statement, and a few of the highlights of what we have done. I will move on to the next slide, which talks about our approach and how we have done what we have done. And so on this slide, the graphic is one, and then we have 3 points. So coming to the graphic side of it, what we're talking about here is the various modules within ServiceNow that we have implemented for them, and which include, like I was talking about in the earlier slide. Step one was to bring in all of those entitlement information in whichever format they're maintaining it today. So they were when we set out to on this project, or in fact even in the readiness stage or the pre-implementation phase, we identified that some of the entitlement information is across different spreadsheets, and in fact, a lot of the entitlement information itself was coming from previous audits results itself. There was no source of truth or database for which we could reach out to get all the entitlement information. So from the past audits that were run in the recent quarter, we pulled in whatever entitlement that the particular vendor has said that we are entitled to, what the customer is entitled to, and we have considered all of that into an Excel sheet based on a template, which we have shared with the customer based on, again, how ServiceNow and the data schema and the model that ServiceNow has for entitlement information. So those templates were shared, and the customer had were asked to fill in those information, and which was again collected between the SAM teams and the vendor audit reports and so on and so forth, and a comprehensive list of all the entitlements has been prepared in those spreadsheets, which was afterwards ServiceNow has been configured to import all of them through uploads and transform maps, and then create and bring the data from those files into the tables. So that was one of the key things and the modules that we worked on in terms of bringing the entitlement data into the system. Then two is, of course, discovery, and here discovery we are also including integration with SCCM and also Office 365 and ILMT for IBM specific data usage. So discovered the software usage across their estate. So we used ServiceNow Discovery, set up ServiceNow Discovery again across the four domains. We had to set up mid servers for each of the domains and locations. We have chosen to use multiple mid servers rather than one for latency standpoint and for other technical reasons. And then we had configured mid servers, then ran discovery across their 4 locations and brought the data in, as well as integrated with SCCM to bring the end user computing device, and with Office 365 to bring in all the entitlement information from Office 365 site account, and finally with integration with ILMT for bringing in IBM usage data. So again, in terms of bringing them in, as far as discovery is concerned, it brings in directly to the SAM tables, corresponding SAM tables that SAM professional has, where we are integrating with the SCCM and other third-party tools. We had to choose the tables from which we are bringing in usage data and then map them back onto, again, there's out-of-the-box integration that ServiceNow provides as a plugin. We are leveraging that. Having said that, in spite of that, we had to put in additional filters to get just the data that we needed, and again, eliminate the noise that we are referring to from SCCM integration or other integration standpoint as well. So that is what we did from an discovery setup in terms of discovering the softwares across the estate. Then once we have the raw data of installs in, irrespective of having eliminated so much of noise from discovery configuration as well as applying filters from SCCM queries and all, we still would end up having, in fact, like we were talking about 600K or about that many raw data installs, which had to be normalized, and which again ServiceNow has an out-of-the-box normalization engine, which using its own content library as well as normalization rules. It normalizes them to standard products. So normalization engine kicks in on the software install table, which is an out-of-the-box functionality, and all the normalized data is then brought into the discovery models table in the SAM professional. And where normalization engine fails to normalize fully, we had to go in and apply additional normalization rules where there is a partial normalization, or in some cases we did manual normalization for some of the truly custom software that BJS has and the customer has. So that's what we did under normalization in the third step. And once we had again the discovered data in and normalized, we already had our entitlement data in place. So we then had run reconciliation for starting with all the 4 publisher packs that are available out of the box. And again, a point to be noted there is when you bring in entitlement data, you might come across situations where the publisher part number might not be existing within ServiceNow. So there have been cases where we have created custom products and custom license metrics as well. And so when you run reconciliation, that's where you would have to. That's where when we said out of the box, whatever license metrics that ServiceNow supports for all the major vendors, and the general metrics. There are about 7 general metrics like per device and per user kind of license measurement metrics, which it accounts for and runs reconciliation against. But anything beyond a custom license metric, if there is a defined, say for example in Microsoft and other, you would have per named users and per named devices. Over and beyond that, processor value units, PVUs and MVUs. There are a myriad of those license metrics across those vendors, which is what makes SAM a very complex function by itself. So for the 4 of the publisher major vendors, across them there are at least a good 80% of metrics could be covered out of the box, and to run reconciliation, you would be able to, or the instance would let you know the compliance position against those particular vendors and the software models involved. And again, this is a 2-part webinar in which part 1 we have already covered about some of the SAM basics, which talks about some of ServiceNow's out-of-the-box structure, data model, which talks about software models and all the discovery models that I'm referring on this call. So I would prefer, those of you who have any questions on that, we can always connect later, as well as request you to look up on those material. But so reconciliation runs against those software models and the discovery models in general. So that is step 4 that we have done, and then we moved on to remediation. In terms of remediation, we had set up governance in place where the SAM managers were notified of non-compliance primarily, and then in terms of remediate actions themselves, we haven't automated in the phase 1, but we have set them up on the journey where we looked at non-compliant and then understand against each model. In some cases, it was though it was saying non-compliant, it was more a function of it was non-compliant at a software model level, but not at a product level. So we realized that you needed to create entitlement for a different product, or at least normalize and map the discovered software to a standardized version, more standardized version, and a higher level version, and then realize that it is not it is compliant after all, right? So those were some of the actions and that we had to work with the SAM team to ensure in terms of staying compliant or non-compliant, and where there are genuine cases of overusage and research, we have notified the respective teams, and that is what we did under remediation for them. And then in terms of the last transaction item was setting up reports and dashboards in terms of all the compliance, non-compliance, specific usage against vendors. You leveraged out-of-the-box reporting, as well as some custom reports and list reporting on raw data as well with regards to overall installs and usage. So that's some of the modules that we've implemented for the customer. And in terms of some of the project planning standpoint, it was a 9-week implementation. We had 4 parallel work streams. So entitlement information, collecting the entitlement information and populating and bringing them into one track or work stream. We had run discovery as another work stream across integrating with CCM and everything as one work stream. Then we had another work stream in terms of starting to normalize right away as well as reconcile. And last but not the least, we had a work stream for reporting and analytics. So that's how we have accomplished and done what we have done in the 9 weeks to achieve our business objective of having or increasing the confidence level in terms of the compliance position for the 4 vendors the customer was concerned with. And at the end of the day, we have received some great testimonials from the directors, vice president, and directly from the CIO on him commenting on us on our job, as well as saying that the exact product result that he wanted to see was what we were able to achieve in the time frame that we were given. So it was very well received, and we had a CSAT score of 9 plus, I suppose it's 9.5 on this implementation that we've done for this Fortune 500 customer. So that is from again talking about our SAM implementation, some of the challenges we've seen, and our implement that we've done. Finally, before I open up for Q&A and important part of understanding your questions and helping you on your journey, I would leave or talk about few takeaways from what we've done and learned from other implementations as well, in addition to the one that I talked about, are these. One, having a clear roadmap for the SAM program. I'm calling it a program in terms of defining it as a function, with clear objectives and expectations from each phase is very critical. I think the reason we had the success that we had in terms of testimonials as well as the CSAT score is that we had sat with the customer and understood their eventual roadmap and what is it that they want to achieve eventually in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year, and so on. And then drawing clear and rational and realistic expectations from each phase, and having defining phases for foundation, intermediate, what we're going to do, onboard new vendors, so on and so forth. And then having very clear metrics as to knowing compliance position for this 4 vendors to start with, right? And with this models, how do we remediate and working and training them to see, working on limited models across those vendors in terms of remediating and all, and the program set up so that they are in position to bring in more vendors by themselves. Having the clear objectives has helped us in achieving those, and as well as meeting their expectations or exceeding in some cases. 2, executive sponsorship or buy-in is a key, and I cannot emphasize enough on that, because even for a project like SAM, which we would think is not so dependent on IT teams and networking infrastructure, the very fact that there's a discovery, and if you're trying to run discovery against all of the servers which might be hosting multiple applications which are critical and sensitive and so on and so forth. So the sheer number of approvals and teams that we had to work with to set up the discoveries in terms of network teams, IT teams, security teams, so on and so forth, and asking them to enable to setting up discoveries, working with the project teams and application teams to get the entitlement data, and all the vendor teams to get the procurement and all of the data. So to move it at an organization, at an enterprise level, having a executive sponsorship is a key, and we were blessed to have the CIO sponsorship for our project, so we were able to move fast and get the information that we needed in time, as well as set and run up, configure things in time, which was a key reason for being able to deliver it in the time frame that we want to deliver. And obviously, the third pin is the readiness. So when we talk about readiness here, having all this checklist and sending in terms of discovery configurations, what is required, what is set up is all shared before the project. All the templates of how we want to capture entitlements was already shared before the project. So we had a lot of those exercises done prior in terms of being ready from a client side before we actually started with the team in terms of doing the real configuration on instance. Again, it saved a lot of time in terms of the actual project duration itself, and completing on time, right? And last but not the least, obviously having a knowledgeable partner, an implementation specialist, and certified resources would obviously be come a long way, particularly in a niche product like in SAM, in ServiceNow, where how would you configure for metrics or models that are not there, putting in new license metrics and running reconciliation, how and where to debug, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of specialized knowledge there, which certified or authorized partners of ServiceNow on SAM would be more equipped to do with, right? So partnering would always help you in achieving those results. Those are the takeaways that we wanted to share on this webinar. But most important of all is we would like to hear from you with regards to any questions that you would have for us, and hear from you as to this anything that you would like to hear additionally or take away from this webinar. With that, I will take a pause and open the floor for questions.